Welcome into the Talkin Tide podcast on the Pigskin Podcast Network. I'm Chase Goodbread, sports columnist with the Tuscaloosa News. I'm joined by Travis Reier, the senior analyst at BamaOnline.com. We're here coming at you a little bit early on this Sunday with a recap of Alabama's 30-6 home win over the Mississippi State Bulldogs. The Talkin Tide podcast, of course, available to you wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, and you can catch us live on the Facebook or the YouTube. So we're everywhere here on Talkin Tide. Also on Twitter, the handle there is Talkin_Tide. You can get links to all of our podcasts pretty much as soon as they drop right there on the Twitter feed. So be sure to give us a subscribe on YouTube and a follow on Twitter. Catch us on Facebook as well. Quickly want to thank our sponsors, more on them a little bit later, but Peterbrook Chocolatier of Tuscaloosa, North River Dental Associates, and DraftKings, as always. Thanks to the three of them. And Travis, we jump right in, 30-6, the final score. Alabama just misses a shutout, coming off of the worst defensive performance in recent memory for sure, if not long memory, for a Nick Saban defense at Alabama. And it's really a complete rebound in Tuscaloosa.
It was, and we sort of touched on it during last week's midweek podcast that stylistically this was an offense with Mississippi State, although spreads the field, throws the football a good bit, not based in explosive plays nearly like Tennessee is. More of a dink and dunk, an offense that doesn't have a high yards per pass attempt total typically under Mike Leach. And, that was the case once again in this one. Will Rogers averaged under 4 yards per pass attempt in the game, 15 pass breakups. And of course, we're going to talk about Eli Ricks, I'm sure, making that first start at the corner opposite Kool-Aid McKinstry. And, I thought both those guys were really good. Alabama still had a couple of pass interference penalties, including one late that helped Mississippi State finally get into the end zone against Alabama with Mike Leach at Mississippi State. But all in all, 3 penalties for 20 yards. Ricks looks good in his first start. It wasn't a second half to remember for the Alabama offense, but there were still some positives.
Yeah, defense definitely the story in this one. 4 sacks, so the pass rush looked sharp after having a rough outing against Tennessee. Eli Ricks, as you mentioned, 4 pass breakups for him in his starting debut for Alabama in place of Terry and Arnold. And let's just start right there with some of the personnel changes. Nick Saban hinted they might be coming, and they did. You had Eli Ricks in for Terry and Arnold at a cornerback spot. A couple guys out of uniform, presumably injuries on that front. DJ Dale not in uniform. Jaheim Otis, Deontay Lawson, all not in uniform. Lawson, that loss for this particular game, maybe not a huge blow because Lawson wouldn't have played a ton of football anyway, right? Because they spent the whole day in dime, the whole night in that dime look. We got to see Dallas Turner playing off the ball more in that package. And really, Travis, Mississippi State and Mike Leach decide, well, if you're going to dime us all day long, we're going to try to run it. And they tried. They tried to stick with that running game in the first half. But they certainly couldn't break anything. Alabama, even though it was light in the box, I thought did a really good job against the run in the first half.
They hung in there. I think it was 62 rushing yards for Mississippi State in the game, 57 of those in the first quarter. So you're right. Unlike some previous Mike Leach teams, especially the last two at State, where they just couldn't run the ball even against the dime, this offense has shown with Dylan Johnson and Woody Marks that it can at least threaten you with the run when you're in 6 defensive backs. So that took a little bit of getting used to. You're right. It was interesting with Dallas Turner. We saw him inside. We saw him on the edge. Really was able to flash his versatility, I thought, in the game. Henry To'oTo'o had 13 tackles against Mississippi State last year. He had 13 tackles against Mississippi State on Saturday night. So kind of more of a space game. I think that suits Henry probably better in a lot of ways, where he can run sideline to sideline. He's not having to worry about squaring big backs up or even quarterbacks between the hashes. And I think once Alabama kind of got into a defensive rhythm and showed that, look, you're not going to be able to make a living running the ball against our dime that was actually where they wanted to be. And that was somewhere they weren't able to totally get against Tennessee, where they took the run game away from Tennessee enough to make them one-dimensional. They were able to do that with Mississippi State.
Mike Leach said his squad was scared of that jersey, Travis. You gotta respect the blunt honesty of that guy sometimes. You wouldn't hear that from a lot of coaches, but he said it. He said what they call the quiet part out loud.
Oh, Mike. Yeah, it's just been tough, man, for his teams, his offenses. I mean, he can talk about his roster all he wants, but it took every second Saturday night for him to finally get his offense into the end zone in 12 quarters against Alabama as the Mississippi State head coach. So we can talk about players and we can talk about psyche and all those things, but the common denominator in this 3-0 run against Leach over in Starkville is that his offense has been the equivalent of popcorn flatulence in those matchups.
There's no doubt. Alabama, not a lot of respect for the deep ball in the secondary, right? Kept everything in front of them. They were playing on their toes for that short stuff. And you combine that with a pass rush that did a much better job than it did a week ago, and a really rough night for Will Rogers. 30 for 60, which for him is 50% is bad for any quarterback now. But especially for Will Rogers, Travis, who's used to being 75, 80 on a good night.
Yeah, I thought the secondary did a good job. DeMarco Helms had a nice play on a fourth down, really came up and brought the wood to force that one incompletion. And, man, it seemed like once State got down, Leach was going for just about every fourth down. And, State hit on 3 of 6, but, boy, the ones that didn't hit on set Alabama up in pretty good shape. And then you combine those failures with a muffed punt from Mississippi State inside its own 20. Alabama wasn't able to turn that into a touchdown in the second half, but it was a field goal from Will Reichard. And, we look at Alabama's offensive numbers and they're not great. And regardless, they're not great. But a lot of times it's not like they had all that far to go, it seemed like.
Yeah, offensively, we'll go ahead and jump there now for Alabama. Another solid night for Bryce Young, 21 out of 35, 250 yards, couple touchdowns, no interceptions. However, the running game kind of disappeared in this one. We saw Jahmyr Gibbs pick up 37, I think, on 10 carries. But really, Alabama didn't have much of any balance in this one. And Bryce Young did his thing, extending plays again. Not sure I've ever seen a quarterback who can extend plays as long as Bryce Young can and will. It's unfair to corners, Travis, to have to cover anybody for that length of time.
Yeah, especially when you're bringing 3 guys in the pass rush like Mississippi State did on more than one occasion Saturday night. So when you're starting out with just a 3-man rush, and then he's able to extend on that, even this group of receivers, and I think it said something again, though. It is a positive to be able to see Bryce do that, but it seems to take these receivers a while to get open, doesn't it, on some of these occasions? And so a lot of times he's having to maximize every second that he possibly can. But I thought you saw JoJo Earl do a nice job on his touchdown pass, eventually presenting himself to Bryce. I thought, once again, you saw some good things from Ja'Cory Brooks. He had the 40-yarder a couple snaps before JoJo Earl's touchdown catch there in the first half. So, there were some positives, but, the run game, you're right. You can't live with that week in and week out. And kind of was the story for this offense that it's been throughout the season. Big plays are busts a lot of times. Explosive plays are not a lot. And more often than not, and I give Zach Arnett some credit for this too, I think he's really one of the best defensive coordinators in the SEC. State, after getting mashed by Kentucky's run game last week, was hell-bent on early downs especially. You saw Jet Johnson, the starting inside linebacker for State on the game's opening play. He was downhill from the snap, and he dropped Jahmyr Gibbs for a 2-yard loss. And even on that play, Jahmyr didn't look like he was really feeling all that great. I didn't think Jace McClellan looked like himself in the game. You saw Roydell Williams early. So, we'll talk about the bye week, but I thought those were some positions when you include Bryce into that, still with his lingering shoulder issue. Some offensive skill players for Alabama look like they're ready for the off week.
There's no question, and Alabama has had some trouble running the ball at times this year for sure. That there have been a couple of games prior to this one, Travis, where the only real difference in the running game has been Alabama busting a huge one that skews the numbers, skews the average,
Big
and makes
plays.
the whole thing look a whole lot better, right? The McClellan touchdown in Austin, for instance, comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these, and Gibbs, of course, is the real game breaker. But you break one or two of those kinds of runs in a game, and it kind of covers up a lot of issues.
Empty carries,
with the rest of the running game, and Mississippi State, in not allowing the breakaway, kind of exposed it.
Yeah, and we saw some reverse action off some of the zone runs. Jahmyr Gibbs scored on one. The longest run Alabama had in the game was the 19-yarder for the touchdown that he had. And you saw Jermaine Burton sort of come on reverse motion. That tells me they've got some of that stuff in the playbook. And I thought even against Tennessee, with the way Tennessee was flowing to the backs, right, they were hell-bent on slowing down Alabama's backs. And it still didn't work a lot of the time. But Mississippi State sort of took that same approach. And so you're going to have to bring something else to the run game where you hand it to a wide receiver on a reverse, or you maybe throw it more to the backs on early downs, because Mississippi State, I thought it was very clear from the outset that they weren't getting Christian Rodriguez for a second straight week. And really, Alabama doesn't have that kind of back anyway. Rodriguez isn't an explosive guy, but he will 5, 6, 7, 8 yards a chunk you. In Alabama, I think in some part due to its health issues right now at running back, not a great yards after contact team right now.
No. The idle week ahead for Alabama, as you mentioned, a good week for it after 8 consecutive weeks of football. Nick Saban definitely sounded like he was ready for his team to get a break in the post-game news conference last night. Justin Aboybe trying to get a neck injury healed up. We haven't seen him in several weeks. Of course, Jaheim Otis, Deontay Lawson, and DJ Dale, as we previously mentioned, did not dress for this one. Nick Saban said one of those two defensive linemen at least ought to be back for LSU. And let's not forget Isaiah Bond, Travis, one of Alabama's speediest wide receivers at a position where they need explosiveness. I don't believe we saw him after the targeting call with the helmet.
I think he actually came back. I think he came back. Yeah. And I was surprised because maybe I'm wrong, but I thought he came back into the game. And I was surprised because that was a big time targeting hit to his head. And he got it when he hit the field too, with his head. So that was a scary situation there. And you're right. They need all the explosiveness they can get. And that's why it was also interesting to see Tyler Harrell. He's real, Chase. There was a Tyler Harrell. I thought it was like Chris Carter's kid there for a while. Remember Chris Carter's kid?
Duron Carter.
Duron. We'd always get asked about Duron Carter,
Yeah.
Because there would be like, talk about him like he was Bigfoot. We never really saw much of Duron. It was starting to get into that neighborhood with Tyler Harrell, but we saw him. We saw the Louisville transfer Saturday night, Chase.
On the field, made his first catch for Alabama, a 12-yarder from Jalen Milroe. I believe Bryce Young had already retired for the evening by the time that came around. But, yeah, good to see Harrell get on the field. After Nick Saban, we touched on this in the last podcast, but after Saban kind of foreshadowed a little bit of a lineup juggle, and with Harrell being back healthy again, and with wide receiver play being pretty inconsistent on the season, we both kind of called it last week that this is if we're going to see Tyler Harrell do anything this season for Alabama, this is the game where it kind of needs to start. He did get on the field, but he's obviously a ways away from the regular rotation.
Yeah, there's still some guys to navigate there, but there's still the opportunity because, as we saw, 11 different guys caught passes in the game. So this is not narrowing down, it doesn't appear. And you like the fact that Bryce can thankfully spread the ball around like that, because without him and his ability to do that, a lesser quarterback right now without some defined dudes at wide receiver, this would probably be a 2 or 3 loss team right now instead of even just one. So it's good to see Ja'Cory, though. It looks like Ja'Cory is becoming earlier in games, Chase, more of that guy that can get them going. And I'm still seeing Jermaine Burton in that mix, JoJo Earl, Kobe Prentice. They're playing a lot of guys, and they're getting them in and out pretty early in games.
They're not shy about trying them. That's for
No.
sure. The rotation at wide receiver is definitely pretty deep for the Crimson Tide. A standout number one hadn't really emerged. Maybe Ja'Cory Brooks is going to be that guy down the stretch. He definitely has played better of late. All right, going to thank a couple of sponsors here on Talkin Tide really quickly. Going to talk to you about North River Dental Associates and that fantastic service you get from Dr. Jack Smalley and that great bunch of dental hygienists over there at 1100 Fairfax Park, right off of Watermelon Road. North River Dental is going to get you in and out the door on a routine cleaning, typically in under an hour. Never more than one or two people sitting around that waiting room. They get you in and out quick, but they do it with a high-quality job. Also doing Botox and Juvederm treatments if you want to tighten up those facial features. And, of course, any kind of other dentistry you might need, from porcelain veneers to endodontics, dentures, and more. North River Dental Associates is going to get you taken care of. If you'd like to make an appointment, get one of those 2 routine cleanings you need every year, Dr. Jack's waiting. The phone call 752-3506, or you can go online, make an appointment at northriverdentist.com. It is North River Dental Associates.
Going to tell you about Peterbrook Chocolatier out there at 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hills section of Tuscaloosa. In its 16th year of business there, Peterbrook Chocolatier has got you covered. You got Halloween coming up. It is perfect for Alabama fans because you got the bye week with the Alabama Crimson Tide. So you can go ahead and stock up on those goodies, and you can watch the rest of college football during the upcoming weekend. Celebrate maybe Nick Saban's birthday with some Peterbrook Chocolatier. That's coming up. I think Nick would want you to do that, Chase. So get by Peterbrook Chocolatier for all your Halloween needs. You got the holiday season right around the corner. Need to go ahead and get those orders in, whether it's a holiday party, whether you're in charge of corporate gifting. 205-752-0211. That's the number to call, and they'll get you set up, and they still have those great classes as well. Go make your own chocolate. Take it home with you. Hog it, eat it all. Don't share it. Peterbrook Chocolatier, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North.
Finally, going to tell you about our corporate sponsor. That would be DraftKings. Hey, you need a few more bucks around the holidays. Take it off the man, Travis. That's one way to pick it up. Football season's right there. 4th and 1. Push it over the goal line with the DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Unbeatable offers. Right now, new customers can make any $5 NFL bet and get $200 in free bets if your team wins. You just can't beat that. To make things even sweeter, you can now throw down on stepped-up same-game parlays once per game day all season long. So download that DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the promo code TPPN, and you'll get $200 in free bets if your team wins. Just place a $5 bet on any football game, and you'll get that $200 in free bets if that $5 bet is a winner. Only at the DraftKings Sportsbook. And make sure you use that promo code once again, TPPN. All right, Travis, we go around the SEC before we get out of here. It was a light schedule around the league in week 8, no doubt about it. But LSU knocking off Ole Miss, certainly the biggest game in the league for the day, really. LSU now, Travis, in control of their destiny with a head-to-head win over Ole Miss, and Alabama still ahead on the schedule. Brian Kelly's team has now scored 45 against Florida and 45 against Ole Miss in back-to-back games. So that Tigers offense is starting to hum.
Jaden Daniels, in a word, is balling right now, the LSU quarterback. And he's doing it with his arm. He's doing it with his legs. And don't get it twisted. LSU going into the season had guys around him, especially at the wide receiver position, and not just Kayshon Boutte. They go 3 or 4 deep at wide receiver with just about anybody in the league, maybe college football. So it's really come together on that side of the ball. They're good enough on defense at some critical areas, maybe not so much on the back end, but their defensive line can slow down the run enough, but their edge guys are very capable of giving quarterbacks problems. And seemed like once Ole Miss got off Lane's script in Death Valley Saturday, that was pretty much a wrap. And pretty strong statement, I thought, from LSU. I think it was a 42-3 run to end that game for LSU.
Yeah, the fourth quarter was 28-0.
I mean, that's impressive. And so, yeah, we've been talking about Alabama Ole Miss, right? And we got Alabama LSU coming up after the bye week, then the trip to Oxford. So some road trips, certainly defining road trips for Alabama once it returns to action.
What about Jimbo, Travis? Goes down to South Carolina 30-24. I think that heat's finally warming up over there in College Station. This is awful. I got
warm up the heat, but warm up that checkbook, you know. And I know A&M. I know about all the money, all the oil, and in the tall buildings in downtown Houston and Dallas. I get it. I know they've got a lot of cash. That's still a big check, you know. But but it is at the point where I don't know. And I say this because I don't think Jimbo's the kind of guy that you're going to go in there and go, Jimbo, we want you to hire an offensive coordinator. We want you to delegate basically the offense entirely to someone else. Then why the hell did you hire Jimbo in the first place? Exactly. If you want to do all that? I mean, that's why you hired him. Yeah. So I don't know what they do. And I know Connor Weigman, the 5-star freshman, got in against South Carolina on Saturday night. Haynes King dinged up a little bit. So, boy, I don't really know other than it seems pretty predictable where we're headed. It's just, is it in the very near future? Is it after the season? Do you go another year with this and say, look, Connor Weigman is Jimbo's guy, and we're going to give him 2023 with his guy at quarterback, the A&M Jameis is what I'm going to call Connor Weigman, and we'll see how it goes. I can see it going a couple different ways. I don't know about you.
Texas A&M, Travis, is averaging an SEC worst 21.9 points per game offensively, and you're paying a head coach with an offensive background, $95 million or whatever the number is.
Oh, I know it's crazy. I think it's a matter of time. It would seem like, but if Weigman wasn't there, I think it would be totally done. But the presence of Weigman maybe gives Jimbo the start of 2023. Now, even that might surprise me. And hell, Weigman might even be to the point now where he's like, I'm fine with a new coach. It might not be a situation where Weigman says, if coach, was it Jimmy in Hoosiers? Coach goes, I go. Coach stays, I play. I don't think it's a Hickory high school basketball situation there.
Jimmy Chitwood.
Yes. Oh, that smooth shooting Jimmy Chitwood.
If this is it for Jimbo, they're going to have to get a couple J.R. Ewings to stroke that.
Oh, they got him. I said, like we've heard about those big buildings in downtown Dallas, and in Houston. They got a few JRs over there. A few Ewings. Yeah.
Vanderbilt Commodores cover that 14. They take 14. They took the 14 and they cover a 3-point loss to Missouri. Travis, Missouri almost tried to give that one away. It started to look like the Auburn game there for a minute, but Vanderbilt picked up a fumble and returned it 1 yard for their first touchdown. and then they throw this little smoke screen that goes for the distance to give up another touchdown. It got dicey for Missouri, and it really shouldn't have.
As we said last week, somebody had to win an SEC game between the two. It had to happen. So Missouri was kind of the last team standing in Columbia, I guess, Saturday, and tough for Vanderbilt. Not a bad start to the season in non-con, but it's been pretty predictable for the Commodores. Had a pretty good first half against Ole Miss a couple weeks ago. It's not like they haven't been competitive in stretches, but just the elusive nature of an SEC win for Vanderbilt right now.
That is going to do it for the Talkin Tide podcast. Be sure to join us the Wednesday before the LSU game. That'll be the next time we podcast. Travis and I always take a week off from the podcast right along with that Alabama Idol week. So you can join us again Wednesday of LSU week, we'll have that preview for you. So looking forward to that for sure. Enjoy the Ida week. Enjoy your worldly travels, Travis, and some time off.
Yeah, I got to watch out for Pops, over there in Europe. So
yeah, need a full report when we reconvene on Pops.
I hope we make it back.
All right, that'll do it for Travis Reier of BamaOnline.com. I'm Chase Goodbread, the sports columnist with the Tuscaloosa News, and we will talk to you LSU week here on Talkin Tide.